Alright, welcome to your quick little Google Earth tutorial. I'm going to show you some of the tools you're going to be using throughout this semester. So you can see how it's set up over here on the left. You have a search box, which you can use to look up specific sites. You can also feed lat long coordinates in there. You have the places. That's where you're going to find most of your links to go to the different sites that you're going to need. This is also where you're going to find your files that you're going to be using in the class. And then down here you have layers. Now some of these may be checked, some of them may not be. Things that are good to keep checked are the borders and labels. The places aren't too bad. I like to turn the photos off. These are fun to play with, but there's a whole lot of them. And you can go through any of these others if you want to play at some point. Some of these gallery ones are nice, like you can turn on earthquake locations, you can turn on volcano locations, and that comes in handy as we go through the semester. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and open up this file with our first week's lab. You notice here there's no, if the box isn't checked, you're going to want to make sure that gets checked, and that's going to pull up the locations. And as you can see up here on the globe, a few of those have popped up. If you click this little triangle next to it, it's going to pull that down so you can actually see all those locations now. So let's say you want to go to the Sendai Airport. All you're going to do is double click on it. And you'll see there's a little information box that pops up. This is kind of cool because in here you can even, it'll take you to a link of the Sendai Airport with the tsunami wave coming in, which is really neat. For now, we're just going to go ahead and close that out. So some of the things you can see on here, you can see there are those locations. So if all those are kind of getting noisy, you can turn those places off and they'll disappear. But the roads are still there. So here is the Sendai Airport. It's one of the first locations that was actually hit by the tsunami in 2011, which makes it pretty famous. Now, what I'm going to show you are some of the tools we can use here. All right. So if you notice, I've got everything turned off if you want to zoom out. Right now, I'm just using the scroller on my mouse. You can also use the tool over here on the top right of your screen. Zoom in, zoom out. You can pan around. You can also turn the view where you're looking where north isn't up anymore. One of the great tricks that I've learned along the way to help you out though is, let's say you get something all messed around and you're kind of not even sure what your view is anymore. If you hit the R button on your keyboard, it turns the screen so that north is up again, and it turns it so you're looking straight down on your view. Alright, so I'm going to zoom on back in here and I'll show you some of these tools we're going to use. So I turned this off earlier. So this right here is one of my favorite tools. It's the little clock with the arrow on it. This is the historical imagery tool. You're going to use that a whole lot. So you can see right now, if you look, the image that's on your screen was taken actually pretty recently. You can actually see that down at the bottom of the screen here where it says imagery date was 9/12/2014. So this one was just taken just a few months ago. Apparently Japan's nice and green during the month of September. You can see all the fields of growing. But you can, if you click backwards, it'll actually take you back through time in the imagery. So this is what it looked like back in March. Not quite as green, right? Or this is what it looked back in 2012. Or there's the other side in 2012. And if you keep zooming, ooh, look, it's all snowy. All right, but some of the footage you're going to be looking at is going to be pre and post tsunami. So then tsunami occurred in 2011 in March. So I'm going to go back kind of before the tsunami happened. Here we go. All right, here we go. So this is the pre-tsunami view. So this is what the coastline looked like before the tsunami hit. So you can see some businesses, maybe some homes. We zoom in, is that a pool maybe? But if we were to take some of these kind of easier spot locations and go forward in time, so it's all cloudy. You can just skip over those, that's okay. So that's what it looked like right after the tsunami. And you see all those trees have been stripped away, the beach has been severely eroded, and a lot of these homes are just destroyed. which is pretty crazy. The airport itself sustained quite a bit of damage. You can see the runways are sustained heavy damage. But if we keep going, you can see just how quickly they started recovering here. So planes are already back on the tarmac at the end of March and kind of functioning not long after that. So there is in April with pretty much everything sort of cleaned up, at least at the airport. Although you can see the coastline still looks pretty gnarly. So that's a great tool you're going to be using, because one of the things we're going to be doing, particularly in this first lab, is looking at how things have changed over time. So I like that one a lot. The other tool you're going to be using quite a bit is the ruler tool. So let's say you wanted to know how long this main runway at the Sendai airport is. If you turn on the ruler tool, it's going to pop up. I'll pull it onto view. And you can do a line, you can do a path. At least in yours, we don't have the tools for Pro quite yet, but the path can be kind of handy. And one of the things you want to make sure you're definitely doing is changing it to the right units. We're going to use meters and kilometers a lot, since those are our scientific measurements, but we'll use feet and miles sometimes too. So I'm just going to go ahead and change that to miles. So you can see our little box down at the bottom. So if we put that right at the beginning, stretch it out and click again over here, this tells us it's about 1.94 miles. Now, there's sometimes you're going to be trying to measure the width of a circle or the diameter of a volcano. And you're going to want to take more measurements than just one, but they make it kind of easy, because if you click on that other dot, you can actually drag it around. And it's really nice for kind of trying to find the maximum diameter of, say, a volcanic crater by using that. All right, so that's a handy thing, and you can even still change it now. So we can change it to feet, we can change it to meters. Map length and ground length, those should, for the most part, be the same numbers for you. So the map length is going to ignore altitude, so that's sort of the measurement as the crow flies. The ground length is actually going to take into account if you're going up or down a slope. Most of the time they're going to be so similar, so I would just always go with the map length, and we'll make our lives easy. So the other things you're going to be wanting to do is create a place mark. That's what this little dot right here does. So let's say you want to make a place mark because you want to remember this building here. I just sort of picked it randomly. So if you want to make a place mark, if I'm going to add it to this folder here, so make sure you have the folder you want to add it to highlighted over on the left in your places, and then you just click that button. I'm going to scooch it over. Now at this point you can drag it around, still move it so it's exactly where you want it. So I want it on that very northwest corner. You can put in a name, Japan building. It'll tell you the Latin long. You can add a little description. You can put in images. You can put in links, and you're going to need to do that for your first lab this time. But to add an image, all you need is the image URL. So that's pretty easy for you. Same thing with the link. Just make sure you have the link copied. And then add them in. You can change the color and the style. You can change the view, the altitude. For the most part, I always just leave these alone. So that makes life pretty easy on us. You can change the way the little icon looks, and that's one of the things you're going to be doing too. So if you want to say, hey, there is a, I don't know, maybe it's a burger joint. You can change that, and now you can see over here it looks a whole lot different. I'm going to say okay there, and we'll leave it where it is just for right now. Those are sort of the biggest tools you're going to want to use this time. All right, it's a really cool program, and it's really powerful. We're going to be able to overlay images on it. We're going to be able to do a whole lot of really neat things using this. But it's pretty important you feel comfortable with it right off the bat. If you've used it before, or you sort of feel uncomfortable with the tools, I encourage you to look around and see some other things, because things like volcanoes, St. Helens, let's say you want to see what Mount St. Helens look like. You can fly on over there to it. Oh, that is so not where I wanted to go. Well, let's look at Mount St. Helena anyway. That's a nice little mountain. So you can zoom in again. So it's kind of nice to play around with it. One of my favorite tools that if you ever get bored is this up here. We're going to use this the very last lab, but that you can actually switch it over and look at star patterns. You can look at the surface of other planets, even see if it's going to open for me. It takes a little bit sometimes. I've got a lot of places saved, so it takes a while to open mine up. But yeah, now you can zoom in on the moon just like you can on the Earth. So this is a really fun data set to get to play with, and if you've never kind of got a really good look at what the moon looks like up close and personal, I highly recommend playing with it just a little bit because it's really, really neat. Oh, look at that. That looks like a river, but it's actually probably a feature we call a lava tube because the moon is covered in basalt. I'm going to go back to Earth. Last couple of things I want to point out to you since this is getting kind of long. I'm going to show you a few of the little information things that are shown on your screen. So down here, it's going to tell you where your imagery came from. Right now there's a whole lot of them because these come from a lot of locations. There. I'll give you a little look. Let's zoom in on my hometown here in Nowhereville, Texas. It's a pretty small place. So this is where I'm from. Walmart's out here. It's hard to miss. It's kind of the biggest feature we've got, it looks like. So you can see down here, this was the imagery you see on the screen was taken in 2015 it's copyright 2015 Google. Imagery date is 12/2/2013. As you move your cursor around, notice how the lat and long changes. So if I ask for the latitude, longitude, make sure you're right on exactly what you want and get all of those decimal points in there too. Next, it'll show you the elevation of where the cursor is. That's pretty good. We're going to be overlaying some topographic maps, which will make it a little bit easier for you. And then there's also an eye altitude, which means it tells you kind of how far up it looks like you're looking at. So this is what the view would look at like at a little over 31,000 feet. As you can see, we can zoom in quite a bit. Here is the city park. And you can see if we go all the way in, it's quite a bit of detail that you can make out there. And so this is what it looks like if we're at about just over 1,500 feet in elevation. One thing I would suggest you do, because if you notice when I scroll in, it just keeps going straight down. Google Earth comes with an automatic setting where it'll actually tilt your view. Let me show you what that looks like. I'm going to go to Tools and Options. I'm not going to make you change much of these around. If you want to change the scale bar at the bottom left of your screen, you can change it to meters or kilometers. Mine's just left into feet and miles right now. If you want to change how you're looking at your lat long, you can change that. UTM's pretty handy, but sometimes it's easier just to leave those where they are. But here we go, under navigation. These are the ones that are kind of handy to make sure and change. So I have do not automatically tilt while zooming, which is nice because I'm going to show you what this looks like now. If I do let it tilt, as we zoom in, notice it's kind of pulling me sideways there, which I don't like. And then when you zoom out, it stays tilted. But that's one of those places, if you hit that R button, it takes north up to the top and fixes that tilting problem. So I'm going to change that back while I'm thinking about it so I make sure that happens. One of the last things I want to show you, because you'll be using this as well, plus it's one of the fun tools, is the street view. So Google gets a lot of attention for the little cars that drive around, but this is really neat. So if you click on this little orange guy, you can actually drop him down in a place where the Google car has driven through. We're going to go down on the town square. So here is the county courthouse in my hometown. So you can see where the car actually drove through. And one of our biggest claims to fame here is Moolah. It's a statue of a cow. This is Dairy Town in Texas. So of course we're going to have a statue of a cow on the square. So it's it's really handy if you really want to see what some of these features look like. Now, not everywhere has this, but they've done a good job of covering quite a bit of particularly the US and even throughout the entire world. If I show you, I'll show you one last Google Street View because we're going to end up using this. If I go to the Grand Canyon, this is one of the coolest projects Google has done. If I zoom over here to the Grand Canyon, all right, oh, look at that. The imagery here is beautiful. You can really see that stratigraphy so nicely. You're going to be looking a little bit at the rocks that are in here, which I think is really neat. Now, you've probably visited Grand Canyon Village here on the South Rim. Now, from Grand Canyon Village, you can go down the Bright Angel Trail. It's one of the most commonly used trails in the whole Grand Canyon. It's going to take you all the way in. There's a nice little rest stop, places to get water along the way before you get that last descent down. But it'll actually take you all the way down to the bottom. And what's really, really cool, Google actually sent a couple hikers with packs that had cameras on them. So they actually hiked it and they did a Google Street View of the entire way down the Bright Angel Trail. So let's see if I can get this to come up. There you go. I'll start up here. Sometimes it's kind of grumpy to load the whole thing, but if you drop it down, there you go. So that's exactly what it looked like. And those hikers were going through, and you can see they did it in October of 2012. And we're actually going to use this because you can see the rocks so nicely all the way through. It looks like that's probably one of the limestones. I'm not really sure where I dropped down into. And then you can just kind of follow the trek all the way down. So we'll be looking at some of that a little bit later on in the lab. So I hope this quick little tutorial helps you out, kind of gives you an idea of how to use some of these. There's more tools that we're going to be using. I'll point those out as we get closer and as you need them. But I hope you have a lot of fun with this, and please take your time, play around with it even outside of just the lab assignments, and you'll get a lot more comfortable with it really quickly.